Hello there. Let's get this show going. I'm Jeffrey G. O'Brien, the director of Lunch Poems. I'm pulling double duty today because my co-curator Violet has a new baby and is on parental leave. So Violet, if you're watching, you shouldn't be, and congratulations. We're really thrilled to have Connie Mae Oliver here to read in the last reading of the semester. Before we get to that, could you please silence your phones if you have them on? And I also want to express thanks to the people and institutions and entities that support Lunch Poems, Dr. Tom KALW, the library, the English department, and the Office of the Dean of Arts and Humanities. Okay. I assume you're going to be reading from Dormilona, yeah? Okay, that's what I'm talking about. This book will be available, by the way, from Pegasus at the back after the reading, and I think that Connie is happy to sign and talk with you then. So Dormilona, in Venezuelan Spanish at least, can mean sleepyhead or nightgown. It doesn't mean either, it means both. And it also means the passage back and forth between these meanings. I put it this way because Oliver's poetry is a poetry of betweens. There's the bilinguality of the poems. Some are in Spanish, some in English, some in both, all participating in a movement between the two. There's the constant theme of the matrilineal, generations of women connected across their different ages by blood and experience and oppression, talking on the telephone's invisible umbilical across intervening distances of various sizes. There is the between of immigration, which places family in a here and a there, with those distances between them. And there are the betweennesses of sleep, to return to the title, the hypnagogic state between full waking and full sleep, and the hypnopompic one when rising toward full wakefulness. Oliver weaves together all these intervailing spaces and the passages through them in the 5 sections of Dormilona to make a study of the liminal and of the two desires that the liminal fosters, to stay in it and to cross it. You can hear it both at the end of Hypnagogia, whose brief enjambed lines take place in the no place of the airport. Quote, a line retreating in the gold-threaded terminal in the morning, a delayed return. And you can feel it in the form of the prose poem, Sleep Study, where each paragraph's last sentence leaps the intervening white space to become the first sentence of the next. Oliver's poetry loves all the crossings that verse affords, and all the thinking about the social that those crossings can contain. If you feel you are traveling as you listen to it, it is because the poet has ensured that you are. Please join me in welcoming Connie Mae Oliver.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for that very generous and kind introduction. I feel very, very fortunate and honored to have been invited to read for this illustrious reading series. In particular, I'm very moved by the opportunity to bring my grandmother into this space, who was herself a poet. Her name was Gladys Flores. She didn't have access to academic spaces, literary spaces, or visibility of any sort, although she wrote poetry throughout her life. So it's incredibly moving for me to be able to share some of her with you all today. So Dormilona sprung from various things, but one very significant thing that I hope that some of y'all might be able to see, but it's a photograph of my grandmother from the 1960s, where she appears alongside my grandfather, my mother, and my 2 uncles. And I imagine it's probably easier for some to see than others, but she didn't like the way that she looked in the image, and she tore her face from the photograph. And I'd seen this photograph my whole life. It sort of ossified into my sense of my grandmother, but it wasn't until around 2018 that I really thought about how I wanted to see her, especially as she was passing and she was experiencing neurological decline. And so this book is also characterized by my own efforts to study my own neurology, study my sleep, try to conduct sleep studies and try to connect with her in that way, and also try to see her in a full, loving way, to love her as a complete person So just some context for that as well. This first poem is titled El Trueno y el Desafío. Your thoughts go down the waterway away from you who pursues them. The moon landing, it lands in your heart, creating more land, more than there had been until this hour. Mareada, te vas sola al Parque Central, buscando desmayarte ahí entre los árboles ingleses y las piedras por alguna razón que ni tú entiendes bien. Deep sleep dwells in the bar of light that crayons the wall and makes waves of anything. I am mapping the activity in my brain, chasing synapses maybe, like passing my hand over a flame to understand a volcano. Sometimes my mother and I discuss what it feels like to be lost in a forest. She says my grandmother is the forest she is lost in. She says she's sorry for having placed me in a forest of my own. She's sorry that I haven't found my way out. We wander in our respective forests. I Google near-death experiences, prone to believe the ones that describe it as routine, like falling asleep. When I drive, I think about the passage of time. I think lots about how something won't happen for a long while, and then there it is, happening. The temporal distance turns out to be no distance at all. The wait, no matter how long, is always nothing. Time the mother, time the story, time the amniotic vertigo. When I started writing this book, it was different, but as writing went on and as pages were added, death was brushed in. I rolled Gladys's hair in melon-colored Velcro curlers in 1998. I wrote this book. She died. I started the car, drove, then arrived. Just as empty space is a contradiction, so too is the alleged space between temporal markers. One can be as alive as dead, but what a heavy word, dead. Not especially better, but different is muerta. Perhaps it's worse, a troubling evocation of morder and a grim little rhyme with puerta. My grandmother was fine. We talked about how at 87 she was this and that and irascible, but endearingly, alive though in a garbled way. She was mean, but in a manner we all learned to flatten into character. Then one day she fell, and then I don't know. The day came back to me in 2001 at the front gate of her house when I said goodbye and brushed the intrusive thoughts about never seeing her again, because the government was getting stricter, because whatever, because. It isn't that I don't understand how things work, how an 87-year-old woman falls and something breaks, unlocking death, which was formerly kept aside like a rolled-up rug or a plastic-covered chair. It's that we couldn't see her. We couldn't sit in the Valencia heat, swatting mosquitoes, hearing ice cream bells in the distance, wearing white, gazing at the mountains. Bueno, en fin. I signed up for neurofeedback sessions with behavioral associates. They shipped a device, instructing me to fasten it to the parietal ridge of my head and connect it wirelessly to my phone. MindLift was a name for the training sessions meant to condition the brain to adapt to specific neurowave presets. Bound to this wiring, I fell asleep. My programming was set to increase beta waves and decrease thetas. Or maybe it was the other way around. I tried talking to Gladys over the phone, but she didn't completely know it was me. I felt that she knew it was me in her peripheral dreams, but she never said my name. She echoed what the neighbor told her to say. She hummed. I crouched in front of someone's house on Ditmars Avenue, listening to her chirruping voice in Valencia, the phone a periscope with a foggy viewfinder. Just as I was nearly finished writing, she vanished, taking her things with her. Look at how the moon faces us, shines on us, quieter than the sun. We don't even know how the moon happened, do we? We don't know if it was once part of Earth or if it fell into our arms. This next poem is entirely in Spanish. It's called Manzanilla. Manzanilla quita todo con la fuerza de mi voluntad. El Espíritu Santo te esponja la almohada. A ver, pues, así no le eches hielo por haber comido azúcar, por haberle echado azúcar a las caraotas, como se las comen en el estado Sucre, de donde viene la mata y la insomnia. Se te hinchan los pies y así no puedes, pero yo te cargo, te camino los zapatos, no me canso ni me duermo. Te pido que me dibujes una cabrita, así no. Al fin me dibujas una cajita y me dices, pues adentro está, dormida. This next poem is called La Vuelta. La Vuelta translates literally as the return or the turn, but it refers to a hair brushing and hair wrapping method in Venezuela and in the Caribbean for straightening your hair and fastening it with fastening it with clips. I will go to sleep once my hair is wrapped with the pterodactyl clips. We're going to the center of Valencia to take my passport photos. This is why my hair will be straight tomorrow. Gladys is in her Dormilona in the kitchen pouring whiskey. She tells me, go back, but I say no. When she visited us in Miami, she said, have you ever dialed 911? Dial it, she said, so you can practice and know how to. Do you mean right now? She's like, anda. Well, I don't have an emergency. She was like, say wrong number. It's just for practice. 911, what is your emergency? Nothing, I said. No darkness in the dark, dark and still and floral. I did not forget who I was last time I passed out. I had instead never known, and that was the worst. My grandmother, I have said, is the worst because of her sharp manicure, the mean song she sings. She gave me the middle finger when I was 8, and I remember thinking, whatever. She wrote poems. They're trapped in Valencia in a cabinet with Avon samples. I said to her I would translate them, but I've left her at the edge of oblivion with no one like me there to not take it from her, to not wring my hands. Driving alone in Miami after a day in the AC, the steering wheel burns. I pass the airport and present her in a loved state only the eldest granddaughter knows. You can't talk to me that way. You can't talk to her that way. I've tried to take a picture of the moon, but it looked like a speck, impossible, and I guess it's true you can't photograph her. She's the only one, haunting her own house, filling it up with the bitterest, and as it turns out, truest, night song. This poem is called Empresas Polar. With our combined wares, we went to live for a month in Carora, a once remote town on the Morere River, a region called Altagracia, where French oenologists told La Doña she could cultivate wine in her subtropical country. Mama let us make bags and bags and bags of microwave popcorn. She took us to the main road where a woman straightened my hair and gave me bubalú, pink with a liquid center. Papa kept the books for Bodegas Pomal. We're making good wine in our own country. These are our vineyards, our tributary full of deadly whirlpools, our wine siphoned from river water. That ancient fluid under, now the bodies of dissenters under, and before that other dissenters under others. We make our own wine, our food and our fossils yield the malojo from up where they come, they go, nobody left, nobody drinks, not wine anyway, not ours. Gladys received us back in Valencia with a pitcher of papaya juice and a scowl augmented by her gradient sunglasses. I forget what she named her house. If it wasn't Andalusia, it was something in cursive copper. Between the gate and the front door, she kept a cluster of deadly roses and was like, anda, tócalas pa que veas. This is the last place I saw my grandfather combing his hair with un cepipeine. Please never grow up to be someone who seriously argues about which version of tyranny is best. Chewing bubalú all summer, sugar high, sugar that disintegrates your feet and pulls you under. I washed my sister's hair and laid out the white dress with flowers stitched invisibly in. This is our wine. It comes from heat. It ferments inside of toucan bellies. This is our beverage. It is petro-pink and made of araguaney leaves. This is our food that we mash and turn in the stoneware. We call our past, but we call it wrong. This is all those centuries rolled in. Mama buys the Pillsbury tube at Publix to make it. Before we left Carora, vineyard employees were invited to see the first harvest from a tethered hot air balloon. The children were not allowed, but I can still visualize my forebears smiling in large sunglasses, waving from above, smaller in the sky, but not diminishing, not flying, but aloft in their way. This poem is called El Tao del Taller. El Taller refers to a mechanic shop that my grandmother and my grandfather owned in Valencia in the 1980s and 90s, called Hidralcar. Tío María Leonza nos trae chistris y así pasamos el tiempo, chewing. In the upstairs office of Hidralcar, Hidráulicos Carabobo, there's a gateway computer with a banner-making program. We make so many on the invoice printer. Fabricar la factura, oler a gasolina, construir grúas, tener un pen pal en Francia, los papelitos vienen de tan lejos. A certain industrial blue is splashed on the walls of a workplace. I watch my uncles in construction belts, the silver hammers slung from their jacket loops, Gladys in bifocals at the desk, telling me I look stupid when I give myself chiclet teeth. You could inherit this company if you want, and do you even know what we do? What a crane is? Your uncle, who left school in the 7th grade, builds them, builds engines and what else? And you, who are you even writing to? This next poem is called The Daughter, and it's sort of a meditation on an opera that was very present in my childhood, and that I think has like a meaningful connection to matrilineal themes. The Daughter. My mother has been visited by birds all her life. They alight on her balcony like she's Sleeping Beauty. Franco Zeffirelli's La Traviata was a tolling bell in our house. She would cry a lot about it, this opera beginning and ending with bloody coughs. ¿Qué tiene? I would ask. La verdad es que no sé, ni ella sabe. Escúchale la voz. When she was angry with me, my mother would say I was just like my grandmother. Hearing this, I imagined that brassy head in a foam neck brace, una mala. I said to her, I'm not your mother, you are my mother. I am myself telling you, I learned English with you. In the end, every time, Alfredo is too late, Violeta dissolves into Elizabethan linens and sends a mournful wave of pigeons into the Paris dawn. My mother's eyes shine in the refrigerated light of the Panasonic Manola, Papa says, emerging from the lazarette hallway. ¿Cuándo se acaba esta vaina? This next poem is called Amor Eterno, and for anybody who's familiar, it's named after a song by Juan Gabriel. It's a very beloved song in Latin America, and it was a song that Juan Gabriel wrote dedicated to his mother, his late mother. I'm going to read the dedication that he shares during his live performance of it, which prefaces the poem. Claro, quiero dedicar esta canción con mucho amor y respeto. Más que una canción, es una oración de amor que quiero dedicar como siempre y con el mismo amor, cariño y respeto a todas las mamás que esta noche me han venido a visitar, sobre todo para aquellas que están un poquito más lejos de mí. The rainforest is older than thinking, and I think my way back to it. The melaleuca bark peels off, extinct fruits exist again, major poles and portals reopen and close, ambivalent underwater volcanoes arrange their porous islands, plateaus above the canopy bear exposed amethyst fields, long-armed frogs attach themselves to crystal trees, clouds brush the burning ponds, nobody knows what happens in the sky. The word for heaven and sky is the same in many languages. Since we make a distinction in English, heaven is further occluded and extinguished from the realm of matter. In the morning, we wake up and say, "Good morning, mi cielo." Blue fills the room. This next poem is called Making a Life. The pink ocean recedes until there are only cold, salted sidewalks. There's an infinity of things that I do not know. Gladys has been dead for a long time, whatever a long time is. I counted on her as the one who would venture in my stead. It cannot be easy to be the skeptic, the one who answers meanness with reciprocal meanness, or the one who holds the pain of neglect. I loved connect the dots as a child. I liked not knowing what the suspended mass of numbered dots would turn out to be and the gradual surprise. When my parents reminded me, we didn't come here for you to be a poet, they might have also meant they didn't come here for me to enjoy not knowing things. I would have been a poet if we stayed in Venezuela, and they would have had words with me there as well. They might have said instead, your cousin is an engineer. And Gladys would have advised me that she also writes poems, but she doesn't go making a life out of them, even though she did make a life out of them. I saw her. Women have been asked to send their time out like a cord for others to grasp and guide. Gladys curled away from death until she coiled right in, like a fly into a bromeliad. She berated the neighbor's child. She refused to eat, and she didn't believe what anyone said to her. The neighbors and the doctors enclosed her with tender concern, but it was obvious from any distance that the horizon was winding up to meet the moon. The forest ensnares us because our brain is already its coarse diorama. This is why we get lost in forests, why they can cloister us without a static barrier, and why we are crestfallen by the first red leaf that floats down from a powdery elm in Central Park. Carl Sagan said we are the cousins of trees, and in her essay Tree Time, Sumana Roy describes how fleeting, how incidental humans are to trees. We are their shadows. Men have launched into the forest for ages to pierce their sides for us. Enrique said I could roll down every window in the LTD Crown Vic if I wanted. I could press all the silly car buttons and wear his cowboy hat. What a delight to be a little girl with a grandfather who laughed at everything, collected rainwater with us, and gave out 100 bolivares when asked only for 50. It was a good thing that he had me to scramble the radio dial, that he had my mother to laugh at his Spanglish puns, that he had the entire neighborhood to hold his gentle, transcendent countenance in their shining eyes. Mama holds Gladys's poems on her lap now. She sits and reads them, and I have a difficult time concentrating. The notebook sheets and invoices are thin and soft, like the white curls that sat on Gladys's head above the hard frown line. Their envelope rests on my mother's legs, a halo of paper fuzz, and she plies the scrap poems carefully like she's passing her hand through her mother's hair, like she never could in real life, like she's a little sorry she could have tried more, and I am sorry too, like I could have seen my mother better, like my mother could have seen hers better, like the periscope was so foggy. Who took our eyes? This next poem is called Sleep Study, and it arose from a really nice conversation that I had with a friend. So I was trying for a long time to actually undergo a formal sleep study and then sort of like incorporate and weave in the data, sort of alchemize it with the poems. I had these big hopes of sort of mirroring what might have been happening for my grandmother neurologically in Venezuela. We knew that she was going to pass and that we weren't going to be able to go see her. So this was one modality for me of connecting with her. But it was quite difficult to actually arrange for a formal sleep study. And then a friend told me, why don't you just invent a sleep study? And I thought that was really cool. And so that idea sort of inspired this poem, Sleep Study. Willing the body to pursue the forest dream is a study. The neuroscience majors from Stanford eat gummy bears with me at the function and offer to loan me a machine. It falls through. It falls through. Mama sends a digital transfer of a cassette tape recording of Gladys telling me all about when I will visit her and update her on the things I have learned, including how to read. Wiping the calathea leaves, I whisper, "You're beautiful." Wiping the calathea leaves, I whisper, "You're beautiful." What if I simply invent the sleep study, its parameters and metrics, and its transfer of unconscious imprints, like the time I reverse processed some old color slides I found in an abandoned building? The sleep study data can be imperfect, like the recollection of a dream, which is imperfect memory processing, imperfect processing. The sleep study data can be imperfect, like the recollection of a dream, which is imperfect memory processing, imperfect processing. Taking up sketching nightgowns again, I invite Gladys's cassette tape voice to accompany me, and she says things like, "Keep going. It's just for practice." It's just for practice. The University of Texas at Masaguaral Biological Station conducts the longest study of parrotlets in Venezuela and focuses specifically on vocal imitation. Ornithologists determined in 2007 that contact calls were used by the parrotlets to identify one another. Ornithologists determined in 2007 that contact calls were used by the parrotlets to identify one another. Mama says her phone, near rupture like an overheated Pillsbury tube, is too full of data to receive videos or voice notes. Like a parakeet alighting from one branch to another, she migrates between apps to retrieve my parceled messages. Like a parakeet alighting from one branch to another, she migrates between apps to retrieve my parceled messages. I copy all of this and text it to her. Here, in Oakland, spring announces itself in starlings murmuring over the schoolyard. This poem is called Challenger, January 1986. Event horizons are neither beginning nor end. The formula trailed into the folds of my swaddling blanket because Mama watched the news. Something stopped time as if I could understand language yet, as if fluid time and fabric had folded me onto a new coast. She covered the top of my head and a starfish melted down from the square morning sky. A new cone of time opens when you pass into singularity and you mimic ma, 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 moo, mooey, moo. There is as much folding space as there never was. Ay, she spoke softly, age 26, chestnut hair fastened in a pink banana clip. Dios mío, no puede ser. She drew me near in my unknowing. I struggle with time because what is it? A mirror? Time where I come from? If I come from anywhere, it's this knowing. Infinite orbit. This next poem is called Cantos de Sirenas, and it's named after a traditional folk song from Venezuela. I woke up in the middle of the night, another dream about swimming, a chicken fight and the silt-tinted brackish sound between the shore and a wooded island. My Theos rented a small motorboat and we took turns crossing over. The wind lifted my curls and my cousin Enrique patted my head like I was a poodle. The city of Valencia has a water park called Parque Dunas, where I used to go with my cousins to talk to the boys who ran the slides. They have tubing rides and chlorinated inlets throughout the park, painted palm tree fountains, and various other structures raining blue water on park goers. My Brooklyn roommates invited me to the beach. We took the queue to Coney Island. Scraps of Nathan's famous tray paper encircled us in the air. Later, changing into a nightgown in my room, I saw a man in the window across the alley waving. I can still see his delirious silhouette ensconced in red brick. When the Italians arrived, they found that the communities of the coast lived in stilt homes, which is not uncommon in the Caribbean and is particular to the Orinoco River Basin. Like the ancient chinampas in Mexico, there were complex waterways coursing between purposeful structures, and this inspired the Italians to name the region after their fave. Little Venice, they said. In Iceland, while paying for fish and chips, the cashier asks where I am from. Mishearing, she says she's actually been to Minnesota and that it's very nice. Yo soy el Romero Santo, yo soy el Romero Santo, y si no me necesitas, ¿para qué me nombras tanto? I am my own mother and my own child. I swim to the surface. Óyeme, San Juan Bautista, te voy a pedir un favor, que me aclares la garganta para cantarte mejor. When the earliest land dwellers broke water, they pierced the meniscus and split the body. I swim to the surface. The drums cheer up in the air. And I'm going to share just two more poems. The penultimate one is called Time of Death. Midway through a lecture, a student mentions hearing that we were in our maternal grandmother's ecosystem. That is to say, grandmother produced mother and mother's components, including the ones that produced us. So there's a reason for all of these midnight lucidities, these ideating lights on I-95 reminding me of a past I never saw. After You've Gone comes on through an untuned, upright piano like a set of dentures sunk into a glass of water. I carry your heart. I carry it in my heart. Gladys liked to lie on her Georgian sofas and tell me terrible things, as if by dictation, as if via seance. When I was 5, she recounted her life and the pain of it. I stood before her like a hologram from the future for the grief to pass through, particulate and unmoored. Well, anyway, she concluded, let's practice dialing 911. We don't know the time, although the country once unilaterally altered national time, and Gladys loved that. Allo Presidente, with its absurd din on the Panasonic through the night, blankets her in a soft pallor cast upon her sighing in her Dormilona, glowing with a final reprieve in something, anything, that she chose for herself. And this last poem is called Truman Sleeps, and it's a reference to the film The Truman Show. Near-death experience reporters say they escape time. How did they know? Christoph watches from the fake moon. Am I Christoph watching me from the fake moon? The sleep center doctor and I have a video consultation. He describes the ring that I will wear. It reads everything, he assures me. The energy bill arrives. Imagine that, the energy bill arriving with a tiny lightning bolt on the header. I guess right before falling asleep is time. Maybe you could have seen something beyond this, says my mother. Then you never would have coiled from the center of the bed into your abyss of unknowing. A sudden relief, rising from the grated stone, middle consciousness. The sleep center doctor cannot tell me where I went. You went to your brain, he might say. You went to the forest. Kenneth Ring subdivided the near-death experience into a 5-stage continuum using Moody's 9-step experiment as inspiration. The subdivisions were peace, body separation, entering the darkness, seeing the light, entering another realm of existence through the light. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. As I said, Pegasus is selling books in the back, and Connie will migrate back there to talk to you and sign books. We will be paused in January, and we'll come back with 3 readings in the spring. Aracelis Girmay in February, and Cindy Oak in March, and Tanya Foster in April. Thank you for coming, and see you then, I hope.